My mother had a sunroom where she grew plants. It had large windows all along the wall. I saw him go to those windows, press his face against the glass, and cup his eyes, trying to see deep into the house.
Wow. We've all seen him before. In different places that we go, there are people that just don't look right. Something about the way they're acting, or the way they're fidgeting, or the way they carry themselves, or even the way they look, that lets you know that that person is not stable, or something's not quite right about that person. And most of the time, if you study them long enough, you'll see that they do something that is quite unpredictable or a little bit weird and sometimes scary. So we've had when we've gone to bigger cities, because I live in a smaller town and we don't really have this problem here. When I've gone to bigger cities, I've seen quite a few people that were on the street, that lived on the street, right? Homeless folks. And there were a few of them that were completely off their rocker. You could tell. Like, they were talking to people that weren't there, you know, or pointing their fingers and just speaking out loud, almost like they were, I don't know, almost like they were preaching, but they weren't talking to anybody specifically. Or even the people at the gas stations that look like, you know, if you get out of your car, they look at you like, oh, I could hit them up for something. And they give off this vibe of desperation that kind of makes you a little bit uneasy. We've all seen those people. I don't know what it is, but it's almost like we have a sense. Some of us have a sense that we'll know when somebody's just not quite right. And they make for the best horror stories too. We're gonna react to one today from Spooked. If y'all don't know Spooked, his stories are always great. I really love this creator. Make sure to go on over to his channel, click the subscribe button, click the notification bell, and if you like reaction videos, make sure to subscribe to this channel as well. Let's get into the stories.
When I was 11, my family lived in Alaska, about 14 miles north of Anchorage. As soon as you leave the actual city of Anchorage, you're in the wilderness pretty quickly.
Right.
This event happened to me in the summer of 1977. During that time, the town I lived in was actually just a series of roads and off-roads. Most of the people there commuted to Anchorage for work.
Yeah.
That's what my parents did.
Right.
They both worked nights, meaning I spent most of my time alone at home, given that I also don't have any siblings. Our house was about a half-mile away from the nearest paved road and surrounded by woods.
I lived at a few places like that when I grew up too. Not that remote, because we had neighbors that were, you know, a few acres away, but nothing that was like miles and miles away. But I have lived down a couple gravel roads in my life, and I know what it's like to live in small towns, and they're pretty secluded and quiet. You know what I mean? You can pretty much, everybody knows who everybody is, so if there's anybody that isn't from around, you pretty much can ID them right away.
I didn't have any real friends that lived close by.
Right.
I just knew a kid who lived at the end of my road, though.
Okay.
His house was actually the next closest to mine.
That's
One
cool.
afternoon that summer, I was watching TV when there was a knock at our side door. I looked outside and saw it was the kid from the end of the street with someone else.
Dude, that knock's so perfect. It sounded like it was over there. The hell?
I opened the door, and he told me this kid was his cousin, whose family had flown up from wherever they were from to visit.
All right.
I can't remember the kid's name, but I do remember immediately being nervous around this guy.
All right.
He had blonde hair down to his shoulders, wore a t-shirt under a thin leather vest. He also had one of those wallets on a chain. This kid's eyes were dark as hell. I was 11 and hadn't even seen evil before, but this kid set off something in my brain. The boy from down the street even seemed nervous being around him. He said he had told his cousin about my BB gun and how cool it was.
Uh-oh.
I told them to wait outside and I could get it. I just knew I didn't want that kid in my house.
Yeah.
I got the BB gun and went outside and handed it to the weird kid. He rolled it over his hands and looked up and down without his expression ever changing. Without handing it back, he asked me, "How much do you want for it?" I can't remember my reaction after all these years, but I didn't really need money and the gun was a gift.
Right.
So I told him it wasn't really for sale.
Yeah.
And I remember apologizing for some reason. Unfazed, the kid hands the gun back to me, then reaches behind his back and pulls out the biggest damn knife I had ever seen. I remember thinking for a second that it was a sword.
Wow.
The kid said, "How about a trade then?" I shot the BB gun at cans. What was I going to do with a knife? Hunt a grizzly bear? I declined the offer nervously, and the kid turned away and started walking in the direction of their house. So I went back inside and watched some more TV.
I ain't gonna lie, when he pulled out the knife, I thought he was about to say, no, not trading for the gun, trading for your life. So, I can imagine, he said that he looked the gun up and down very closely and expressionless. You've seen that before, right? I can imagine like a stone cold killer, you know, like I got this cup right here. I see this cup and you give it to me and I look at it, I'm like, how much do you want for it? You know? that's the kind of vibe that I just got. Oh man. And you gotta remember this kid's 11 too, you know? And by himself at home. So creepy.
About an hour later, there's another knock on the door.
I knew it! This time I expected it.
I go to our side window, where I can see the door. I peek out, and sure enough, it's that kid again. This time, he was alone.
Uh-oh.
The second time he knocked was louder. He called my name.
Dude.
I stayed quiet. He left the door and started walking around our house. My mother had a sunroom where she grew plants. It had large windows all along the wall. I saw him go to those windows, press his face against the glass, and cup his eyes, trying to see deep into the house.
Wow.
I stayed out of sight.
Now, it's a kid. I've looked through quite a bit of windows too when I was trying to get attention to my neighbors, like, is anybody there? It's usually very innocent when people do that. But because the interaction that he had earlier was a little weird already, and this kid just seemed a little bit upfront, I don't know, man. I would be kind of worried here too.
Luckily, there were no lights on, and I had turned off the TV when I heard the knock.
So it's at night too?
When he couldn't see anything, he continued around the house. He took out that huge knife and began tapping the butt of the handle along the outer wall as he circled. Then he started saying, "I know you're in there." My heart started racing.
What?
Of course, he knew I was in the house. I was 11, home alone. How could I have left the house? Hop in a car and take off? Hell, both our cars were gone anyway. I continued keeping low and quiet, hoping he might think I went to a friend's house somewhere else.
Right.
How long could this psycho just circle the house? He was maybe 14. He'd get bored pretty quickly. No such luck. This kept up for about an hour.
Wow.
The tapping and his voice telling me to come out, and that he had another trade for my gun. Screw that. I'd already gone all in on the "I'm not home" tactic.
Right.
So I stayed quiet and made my way to the kitchen where our one telephone was. This was 1977. No cell phones.
Right.
And our phone was attached to a wall in the kitchen.
Oh my gosh.
Luckily, it had a super long handset cord.
Yeah.
I got it, stayed low to the floor, and called my mother at work. She took me seriously, but there was no way she could get home.
Right.
My dad was in the Air Force, and they sure wouldn't let him skip out early to handle his son's crisis.
Dang.
I would have to ride it out. The sun had gone down, and by that, I mean it was barely peeking above the horizon.
Right.
In the summer, the sun never completely went down in our area.
It's Alaska.
The kid kept pacing around for another 30 minutes or so, and then was suddenly gone. Not being an idiot in a horror movie, I just stayed down and quiet.
There you go.
Eventually, my parents got home. I was still awake. They brushed it off because I ended up being fine.
Right.
But I never hung out with the kid down the street again.
No.
And I pretty much stayed inside the remainder of the summer. There was something wrong with that kid.
Yeah.
Maybe it was in my head. Or maybe he would have done something absolutely brutal to me.
Yeah, I mean, if he's playing around with a knife, I mean, 90 minutes of skulking around a home at night doing some creepy stuff like tapping and saying, I know you're in there. Yo, a little while back, I did a reaction, well, not even a reaction video. I just told a story about how there was a guy with a knife that showed up at at the dealership that I worked at years ago and stabbed a bunch of people. Just completely random act of violence. This guy was off his rocker, but it was crazy. I'm gonna give you a card right here to just check it. I think it should be right here somewhere. Just check the top of the screen. There should be a card in the info button if you want to watch that video. But yeah, people like that. He did absolutely the right thing. What's he gonna miss out on if he doesn't pop up? You know what I mean? Nothing. The kid was crazy anyway. I don't blame him too. And as far as being paranoid and not really hanging out with that other kid after a little while, you know, if you're gonna bring people like that to my house, we weren't really friends, bro. God damn. Control your relatives, man. Let's hit the next story.
For the record, my wife and I are pretty normal folks. We don't do drugs, we're social drinkers, but let's just say we don't have a lot of friends. Except other couples with children. So basically, we don't drink that much.
Okay.
All that to say that when this event took place, we were absolutely lucid and not under the influence.
Okay.
I'm 200% sure of what I saw. My only regret is that I didn't record it or took pictures as evidence.
Wow.
It was summer 2013. My wife was 5 months pregnant, so we decided to look for a nice house to rent in the countryside.
Yeah.
We browsed a well-known website and found a small villa near a vineyard. The owner called us very quickly. We will call him Gerald.
Pretty nice
Gerald
house.
was a fellow in his late 50s. His picture on the website displayed a posh guy wearing small glasses. He was really caring and nice. After a little research on the internet, this guy was running an art gallery. He told us he wouldn't be there to give us the key, but a colleague would welcome us.
Okay.
The day we arrived, a Slavic woman in her 40s was there. She gave us the keys, jumped in her black sports car, and left. It took 5 minutes. The house was beautiful.
Wow.
We were so excited to have so much room just for us.
Yeah.
15 minutes after the check-in, we were having a drink by the swimming pool.
Okay, so it's a check-in. So this is kind of like when they said rent a house, you know, I'm thinking like rent a house for, you know, to live in. But it's kind of like an Airbnb or something like that, right? It's literally just a rental for a night or a weekend or a week, like a vacation or something like that. Kind of like they'd be checking into a hotel. Okay.
Something felt weird about the house, though.
Okay.
It had clearly been furnished by a home staging designer, as everything was perfect and new. Somehow, the frames had generic pictures inside, like stock pictures.
Right.
The poses seemed too unnatural, and you couldn't recognize one person from a picture to another. My wife decided to store our empty luggage on the top of a big cupboard, but she clumsily hit a little box and made it fall on the floor.
All right.
It contained 2 pencils and a keychain with 2 small keys. We put it back where it fell from and started to feel hungry, so we went to cook dinner.
Okay.
The weather was lovely. On that very night, we stayed on the roof and watched the sunset. Then my wife felt exhausted and went to bed.
Right.
I was reading on the roof when my eyes got stuck on a small staircase behind the pool house.
Okay.
I tried not to pay attention, but ended up heading for that staircase. The stairs were made of steel and led to a little cellar. It was a dusty and smelly corridor with a solid oak door at the end. That door was closed by 2 padlocks. I realized I wasn't minding my own business, so I went back upstairs.
Right. 2 padlocks, he said. So, listen. A lot of these stories, people get curious, right? Kind of like the last one we just talked. The guy, the boy could have did something stupid, like as soon as the other boy left, got up and was just like, whatever, you know. If you don't have, if you're renting, first of all, quit being nosy, man. If this is a rental place, you know, we've reacted to stories before where they had one rule and people would break it, you know? Like, don't be digging in people's stuff. If there's a locked door, it's locked because people don't want you in there, right? And you're just renting this place. It's like going into the janitor's closet or the custodian's closet at a hotel. I mean, yeah, you're staying at the hotel, but you know what's it? You know, I don't know, man. Just stay out there. I know there's gonna be something. And as far as the decorations and stuff in there, it's staged like I would think a hotel would be staged, you know? We'll see.
1 hour later, I was still thinking about that door and what was behind it.
No.
I suddenly remembered the keychain with the 2 small keys.
Mm-hmm.
Now it was obvious. I couldn't help going back there to try the keys.
No.
Once in front of that door, it was now sure that the key would match.
Yeah.
The padlock gave in 2 seconds.
Uh-huh.
When I opened the door, a strong smell hit me.
Uh-oh.
Like mold mixed with chemicals. It was clear I just entered a photo lab.
All right.
On a shelf, hundreds of pictures going from nudes to hardcore pornography. On 5 of them, I positively recognized Gerald with a black woman. She was attached to a rope by the wrists.
Okay.
Utterly shocked, I found 2 plastic boxes with photographs of teen pornography.
Uh-oh.
By the writings on the pictures, it went from 2004 to present days.
Okay.
Near the red room, I found more pictures of very violent bondages scenes. The woman had bruises and cuts. There also was an old camera and a dozen tapes, but my heart was already on the brink of explosion, so I didn't watch any of these.
Well, I guess
I
not.
closed the door and sat by the pool for 45 minutes.
Yeah.
I needed to put all back together and decide what to do.
I mean, he didn't see anything as criminal, but being that those pictures were there, especially the nature of the pictures, you start almost thinking that, what if those people are victims? This place is a staging area for something that's clearly a little bit over the top. This is a married couple, 4 months pregnant, on a little vacation, you know, like they don't do a whole lot of drinking and stuff. So I'm sure they're a little freaked out at this point. But you know what? You were curious, man. You deserve to get a little shook. Now, you better put them padlocks where you found them, put them keys back where you found them, and don't say nothing about what happened. And just leave. That's the best thing to do.
I showed the pictures to my wife, and we left the house the very night. We called the cops on our way home, and they told us they'd keep us informed.
Okay.
They never did.
About the cops, though.
1 week later, I had a message on my phone. It was Gerald. He apologized to us, stating everything I saw was staged. He insisted he worked for magazines, and sometimes they ordered shocking pictures. I never believed an inch of what he said. Neither did my wife.
But
I called him back to tell him he had to refund us, as the website asked him to do, but he never answered.
okay.
I called him again 3 weeks later to ask him to refund, but I reached a grocery store instead.
All right.
There was absolutely no more trace of that guy on the internet. To this day, we don't know for sure. Still, every now and then, we bring it up knowing we'll never have an answer.
So when he said teen pornography, maybe he doesn't mean 18 pornography. Okay, I could see now. I didn't think it was anything that he could get arrested for or something like that, because I was thinking that when they said teen, they said violent bondage and teen pornography. I didn't think like young, you know. I guess that's just the innocent person in it thinking, who would do something like that? I know they're out there or whatever, but God, well, he didn't get arrested. His phone got canceled for sure. Or they changed the number or something like that. That does seem very peculiar. But man, you know, I'm not saying that something sinister wasn't going on there. I'm saying you shouldn't have been digging in them people's stuff. You shouldn't have. You know, being that he had these photos and they said he buys them from magazines and it was all staged. If it was illegal teen pornography, the police would have arrested him. He would have been in custody. So, I don't know. It's hard to know exactly what it was, you know? I don't know. We would have had to see the pictures, and you know we don't want to see them pictures, guys. We'll just assume first for more impact. Oh, the Spook Stories are so good, man. Y'all go check him out. He's right here. And there's a couple other videos that are reacted to him from here too. Thanks so much for watching, guys. As always, this is Zueljin signing off, and we'll see you next time.